Welcome to the Free Library of Philadelphia. My name is Libby Campbell, and as a flower child who came of age and was powerfully influenced by the lyrics and music of the 60s and the early 70s, especially that of our extraordinary guest, I am honored, thrilled, and humbled to introduce our author this evening. Beloved as Judy Blue Eyes, Judy Collins inspired audiences for more than 5 decades in her iconic 50-album body of work, personal life triumphs, and commitment to social activism. In the 1960s, she evoked both the idealism and determination of a generation united against social and environmental injustices. She remains as creatively vigorous as ever, writing, touring worldwide, and fostering fresh talent as head of her own record label. She is also the author of several books, including the powerful memoirs Sanity and Grace and Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, My Life in Music. In her new book, Cravings, she provides a no-holds-barred account of her struggle with compulsive overeating and the journey that led her to a solution. Tonight, she'll be joined in conversation with Laura Kovacs, Associate Producer and Director of Author Events. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Judy Collins to the Free Library.
Welcome to the Free Library of Philadelphia. I'm so happy to talk to you.
Thank you.
We're talking, of course, about your new book, Cravings, published just yesterday.
Yes. Yes.
You write in the book, "We're all in the same lifeboat, but the rescue ship is in the harbor and we can all come aboard." Can you talk about the urge to share this story?
I can. First of all, just get this out of the way, if I may. Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air, feathered canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's clouds' illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you so much. You should go on The Voice immediately. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Laura.
That is one of the most amazing things I've ever sat through. To have a career like you do, you say you have to live like an athlete. What does that mean for you?
It's a challenge. I wasn't athletic growing up. I was too busy practicing the piano. I had to spend a couple of hours every day sitting at the piano. Ruined my social life. But I made up for it in the 60s. I did. And I grew up in a family of great, challenging people and ideas. I mean, they wanted the best for us. My father was a wonderful musician, and he was, I think we were trained in that kind of athletic manner. It isn't that we ran around all the time, it's just that he expected the very best, and so there was a sense of discipline and organization and adventure, but you had to sort of have your eye on the sparrow, as they say, and on the skyline. You had to be always looking towards what's going to be better, what's next. And I think that's part of athletic training, too. And the practicing every day meant that I know how to do this, what I do. And I got that in my family situation. And we read, as we were talking about earlier, it's so wonderful to be in a family that reads and talks about ideas and sits around a dinner table and either argues about politics or is lectured to about politics, as was our case some of the time. So the discipline that clicked in early, it wasn't just when I started the career, which I think in part is a problem for some people too, who don't have a background that has certain amounts of intellectual discipline and perhaps not so much the sports as it is the idea of getting your homework done and doing the best and having to practice and live up to a certain standard. So when I hit the road at 19, really, I understood from my father that you had to show up on time, you had to do your work, you were never late, and you always tried to be present. And that's part of that part of athletic, the athletic point of view. Also, just because it's very hard, you have to get up at 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, get on the plane, get to the airport, walk, run, get to the hotel, maybe have 5 minutes to take a nap, get to the job. I do one night stands, so I do about 120 shows a year now, maybe or 130. My husband will tell me. I don't know. He says I'm gone most of the time, so. You have to live like an athlete, and that all speaks to exercise, diet, thinking, focus, concentrate, sleep.
What does it mean to you that you eat and live abundantly?
I have a wonderful food plan, which I talk about in this book, because when I found it, and it's been a long journey. I think everybody takes a long time to get to their own solutions. And because nobody really knows very much about these aspects of allergy, which I focus on in this book a lot, allergy and alcoholism, of course. And they link because the same foods that I'm allergic to as an alcoholic, I'm allergic to as an eating machine. So I have to be aware of sugar, salt, salt is a good thing. Sugar, flour, grains, junk, rice, corn, anything that is something that people make alcohol out of. So you never thought about that, I'll bet. Did you? Because that's actually the key. And fat, I will mention that. We ate skinny for decades because the diet gurus, whom I talk about a lot in this book, some of my favorites, Atkins, and not so much Atkins, but early on it began to be fashionable that you wouldn't eat any fat. So you had skinny cheese and skinny this and didn't eat the chicken fat off which is the best part of the chicken. You didn't eat that, God forbid, or the turkey skin or anything that had fat in it. No. Well, it turns out that a balanced food plan has to include, and I have 4 tablespoons of fat a day, full-fatted cheeses, full-fatted yogurts, all those things. No skinny food, because skinny food is on the road to killing you, because it's not nutritious. It's destructive to eat things that don't have fat in them. I'll say more about that later.
You pack all of your meals every day, traveling to functions. I think it would be helpful to a lot of people to describe the impact that had on you socially, at least at first, early in your recovery.
Well, I've been sober since 1978, so I got into a program, went to treatment in Pennsylvania. I went to Chit Chat near Warnersville, and I got sober, and I am ever eternally grateful to Chit Chat, which now is Karen. Yes. Oh, they were fabulous. They took one look at me, they knew exactly what to do. And so I thank God for my being sober. But I was still bulimic for another 3 years because that addiction had really taken over my life as well. I was dying of alcoholism, but I was also, probably could have died easily from bulimia, anorexia, all that combination of things. They're all under the same heading in my book. I talk about obesity, anorexia, bulimia, undereating, all the different things that we have to try to keep the weight off. Bulimia, exercise bulimia is interesting. Lord Byron had that, by the way. He was our first celebrity dieter, actually. He didn't write about it, but he talked about it to all his friends, and it was the fashionable thing to do what Lord Byron was doing. And he was eating practically nothing and running and running and running and running and running every day to try to get off the weight, or he was purging, and he was announcing to everybody that this was the way to live. And so, people were getting, as they are today, sick on these kinds of extreme measures. So, what was I saying?
We were talking about packing your meals.
Ah, yes. Well, we got here early, so I put apples and cheese in and I cut them and weighed them. I have a little scale back there, and we had our dinner. And I want to say that for years when I got into food programs, which was pretty shortly after I got sober, about 3 years in, I was finally abstinent from bulimia, and things began to clear up. And I began to see the path, but it wasn't as crisp and clear as it is today, because I would not give it up and go to what they called a really, really strict place. But it's not strict at all. It is abundant. I get 3 wonderful meals a day, 4 ounces of protein at each of those meals, a total of, let's see, what is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 8? 40 ounces of vegetables and salad a day, 4 tablespoons of fat, fruit, yes, any kind of protein. Cheese, we have to have 2 ounces instead of 4. I mean, you add that up. This is an incredible amount of food every day. And I am not perfect. I don't claim to be perfect. Progress, not perfection, is my overall score. But I do manage to do that pretty much every day. And I carry my food with me. I carry a little bag. I've got it back there. It's sparkly like this shirt. I wouldn't have a lunch bag that wasn't sparkly.
We all expect a fabulous lunch bag from Judy Collins.
Absolutely.
You clearly have incredible discipline, but when and where do you feel the most lighthearted?
Oh, well, the discipline keeps me lighthearted. I mean, I have, when I was, I started out at 19 singing traditional, I am a maid of constant sorrow. That was on my very first album, as you know. And so I have always found out in my life, since I was lucky enough to be able to play the piano and sing and be in the choirs and the choruses and school shows in my school, I always was lighthearted. Music always has made me lighthearted. I love the fact that I'm working at what I love, and at 77, the trouble about age is that you feel so young. Isn't it true? I mean, whoever thought that would happen, but that's what happens. And so I always had in my life something that was emotionally and spiritually and physically uplifting, which music is. And that's why we need art in our lives. We need art, we need music, we need dance. We need to stop looking at Fox News. We need to go to a funny movie now and then. We need to read and think and invent and write and keep our lives creative. And so I get to do that, and I get to do that 130 times a year. So, somebody said, well, isn't that, no, that's an opportunity. I run into the most beautiful Steinways everywhere in the world. And I get to practice for half hour before I go out on the stage. And I get to sing and figure out the microphones and work on a new song or two. It's an incredibly uplifting career. Now, the reason, I want you to know that I was dying when I got sober. I mean, I hadn't worked for all of 1977, barely. I would come down here and be at the Keswick and have to cancel. I canceled like 45 concerts that summer. A friend of mine said, I saw that on a billboard in LA, and I said, she's done, she's finished. And I was. I had something on my throat called a hemangioma, which is a capillary on the vibrating surface of the vocal cord. And Without it, I would never have sung again, without the surgery to take it off. And with the surgery, there was no guarantee because it was a new laser surgery in 77. But I was finished, you know, that was it. And besides that, I was drinking myself to death. So I was a perfect candidate for chit-chat, and thank God I found a doctor who knew what was wrong with me. Do you know that doctors have 4 hours in medical school on addiction? 4 hours. So no wonder they don't know about eating disorders, and they don't know much about alcoholism, because they don't get it. They don't get trained. They don't get... Karen, which is what chit-chat's now called, Karen has a teaching program. I'm on the board of one of the big places in the country, Hazelden, and we have a school for doctors in New York at the New York... I'm not on the big board in Minnesota, but I'm on the one in New York. And we have a school in New York to help doctors to figure out what is addiction. You know, if you can't... The problem is you can't throw a pill at it. You can try, which many people do, but pills don't work. And for one, I don't take anything. I take a little Synthroid, but that's it. And what else do I take? Anything else? No, I take Advil sometimes. But that's not an opiate, and I don't take opiates. When I was drinking, I would take anything you gave me, and I took incredible amounts of drugs to stay skinny. There was this rainbow selection that I took, you know, something to get you up in the morning, something to keep you going at noon, something to take you out again in the evening, and something to put you to sleep at night. I mean, it was fabulous, but, you know, it could kill you also. So at that point in 1978 when I was dying, but I had had the surgery on the throat, and I was getting better. I knew, you know, I go, oh, maybe it's still there. And then I got lucky because I went to a doctor who understood what was the matter. Although he didn't understand anything about food addiction, and he had a sister who died of anorexia, but he didn't understand anything about it. If you go to a doctor and the doctor says to you, okay, let's take your blood pressure, and we'll take some blood, we'll get your levels, we'll see what your cholesterol is, we'll see what your iron is, we'll see if you you have any problems. But do they ever say to you, why don't you give me a list of your addictions? I don't think a doctor, maybe they might say, did you ever smoke? That's about it, maybe. How much do you drink? Well, we would lie. I mean, I always did. I don't know about you. Oh, a couple times a week.
One thing that this book makes clear, and your other books as well, is that you have sang in the midst of not just the happiness and the joy, but also all of the grief and sadness that life has to offer. What kind of support do you find from your audience?
It's a very good question, actually. I think probably that had I not been a public performer, I don't know that I'd be here. I've always found that being in the company of people who were interested in music and that I could sing music, and you see, we're sitting here, and so if let's say this is a concert and you're here and you're not using your cell phones and all that, you have to turn everything off and sit still and quiet, you know, and be listening. Well, I'll be singing for, 90 minutes or something, and you're alone out there basically with your mind, and I'm here with my mind, and I can go anywhere that I like in my mind, and you can too. So in this room we have, 50, 60, 100 people who have all different things going through their minds, and a lot of them are about transformation. You're thinking about, okay, what am I doing next week, and do I really want to do that? Or what am I going to do for the rest of my life, and do I really want to do that? And I'm thinking the same thing, but not exactly what you're thinking. So we're all on a creative journey, and I think that time, all the time I was drinking, I've thought a lot about this. I'd be out there standing stock still, usually with my eyes shut, singing, but I would actually be experiencing it as a meditative state, and so would you, a lot of you. It's a meditative state to listen to music, to listen to something you're totally focused on. It happens in a museum, it happens when we're reading, it happens when we are with our own minds and our own adventures. So I think what I do, people ask me why, I do it, I make a living doing it, first of all. May be surprising to you, but I do. But secondly, it's mental health. It's a place where mental health can happen in the room. You know, you're not punching somebody out in the street. You're not yelling at the car that just cut in front of you. You know, you're not chasing your teenagers out the door saying, have you done your homework? You're actually here, and I am too, quietly and with this power that you have because you have a brain that works, and you can be changed. I was once reviewed by somebody in London who said that they came away from my concert and they felt they were scarred, and I understood exactly what he was saying. When I go to hear a performance, I want to come away in some way deeply changed and altered in some way that's positive. I don't want to come away thinking, why did I go there? I mean, I hated it. I should have left in the middle. You know, it's if I'm not, and I think I benefit from that as the performer and as an audience, because I'm an audience to you. It's funny, I never thought of that really, but I am. You know, I'm your audience. You as a group form a kind of entity that is entertaining me. Did you ever think of that? I never did, but I think that's true. It's a good question.
Thank you. Can you talk about the healing power of books, of literature, dare I say libraries?
Oh my God. I grew up in a reading family, and my father was blind, so it was a lot of Braille books coming from the Library of Congress. And I formed what I think was a real kind of codependence with the Library of Congress, because he got all those great books that he read to me out loud. You know, I would say that I don't think he minded so much being blind. After all, he could read in the dark. And we got to benefit from that. And then, of course, I went to the libraries and the museums in Denver, and I would go to the story times at the library. I can remember in Los Angeles going to the little library down in Santa Monica for the story hour on Saturdays. You know, that was terribly important to us. And so libraries have always meant so much to us. I mean, I wanted to actually be in the stacks. Last night I was at the library in New York City, and I was just dazzled by it's just amazing for me to be in a library. So I've read voraciously. I would say it might be my first addiction. I always say my first addiction was sugar, but probably not. Probably it was books and reading, because I was read to from the age of nothing.
Have you ever written a song and just wanted to keep it for yourself or your family or your partner? Does it ever feel like it's too much to share?
No.
What do you... Next. What do you think of when you're singing a song from your early career? Is it of the moment, new every time, or is it like returning someplace familiar?
Well, both I think are true. What you want to do, what your goal is to make everything feel like it's being heard for the first time, and that has to do with the lyric and being clear and being able to be present with the song. Same thing is for interviews, by the way, and interviews and book interviews. You have to find something that's new at every moment, and I think that's the secret of performing. I wouldn't know how to sing the same set of songs over and over again the same way. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would not be capable of doing that. And I think that's part of the adventure of creativity, is that you want to be fresh. You want to have people know that you're approaching things as though they are brand new. And they are to you, because they've never been heard the same way. Every show that's live is different. There's a different audience. There's usually, in my case, a different set list. I always tell different jokes. For instance, my father always did, he did a lot of things on the radio that a lot of people got in trouble with in those years. He talked about Joe McCarthy. He talked about the war in Vietnam. He talked about Dien Bien Phu. He named one of our cats Dien Bien Phu. And he talked about life in general, and he read Emerson on the radio, and he read Dylan Thomas on the radio, and he told Mae West stories. my favorite one is Mae West, you know, who said, "Restraint is fine if it doesn't go too far." And she was doing her show one night, and I was thinking of this just this minute, that Mae West also was a client of Gaylord Hauser, whom I talk about in one of the chapters in my book. Gaylord Hauser, who was the Hollywood guru, the health guru to all the stars, Garbo and everybody. Anyway, she did her show one night, and one of her friends came backstage and was wearing this long mink coat. And Mae said, "Why, darling, that's so beautiful. Wherever did you get it?" And her friend said, "Why, Mae, I met a man with $10,000. And the next time they met, it was Mae who had on this long, gorgeous coat. And her friend said, "Why, Mae, where did you get that? Did you meet a man with $10,000? And her friend said, and Mae said, "Well, no, darling, I met 10,000 men with $1." So he would do anything to make people laugh, even on the radio. And so I've always felt that that's part of my duty, too, to make people laugh. If I'm going to sing all these sad songs, you know.
You've always been outspoken about civil rights. What is the atmosphere in the world of folk music in this current political climate?
Well, first of all, folk music per se, the way we used to hear songs on the radio, we don't hear them like that anymore for a lot of reasons. First of all, you can go on XM, Sirius, and you can hear it in all kinds of things. You can hear you can hear folk music, you can hear protest music, you can hear, you know, The Bridge, which plays all these songs from the 70s, which I would like you to know this, although, and you can write to Sirius XM. I don't get paid for the songs they play on the albums on Sirius XM that I made before 1972. How they get away with that? It's another example of crooks in the media. It was a bill that was passed years ago, and it was operative for radio, ABC, CBS, and NBC, who played all our music. I never got paid for those plays. Never. And nor did Frank Sinatra or anybody else who was performing. It's the performer's right bill, which has never been overturned, although we've been trying for years. So, yes, there is a certain problem with this because we don't hear what's really going on. If you go online and you drift into all kinds of oddball sites, you can hear anything. You can go onto YouTube and hear anything you want. You can put headings on your search engine that will find protest music. Well, it'll find current songs written by Noel Stuckey, Paul of Peter, Paul and Mary, just wrote a song which he wants me to record with him and Jonathan Edwards and Tom Paxton, which is very, very political. People are writing these songs all the time, and if you go to festivals, you're bound to hear some young singer singing. The problem is it's not on what we call terrestrial radio, and although to me it's criminal what they've done to performers, including me, it's also true that they claim, the big radio lobbies, and I've been to Congress, by the way, and heard from Sam Moore of Sam and Dave, that when he's protested over this and gone to Congress, he has had death threats because this is a very big lobby. It's a lot of money. Don't be kidded about it. It's billions of dollars probably, and nobody wants to pay up. So the problem is that we can't get the bill changed, but also people say, oh, radio doesn't matter. It does matter. Old-fashioned radio, where you turn the radio on and you get CBS, NBC, and ABC, it's a huge business, and I think that their numbers are phenomenal. People do listen to the radio, and we should be paid for play. But never mind, you can write to your congressman tomorrow. But first of all, write to them about Medicare and about Obamacare and about immigration and about taking away all kinds of things that this gentleman, I won't use that word again, in the White House is proclaiming he's going to take away from us. So first of all, wrote those, and later on, you can write to the radio stations.
Today being March 1st is the first day of Women's History Month. How have you managed to stay in the driver's seat of your career in an industry, like most, that is notoriously difficult for women?
Wow. Have I? I guess I have.
Well,
yes.
you recorded an album in 2015 that is your singing duets with 12 men.
Yes, I have. Yes, and I love every one of them. I was very fortunate to have not only my father who believed that I could do anything, but also my teacher, Antonia Brico, about whom I made a movie called Antonia, Portrait of the Woman, which was nominated for an Academy Award. I was thinking about this the other night when I was watching the Grammy, the Oscars. I was nominated with my co-director, Jill Godmuller. We made a film about my teacher, who was the first woman to be a conductor in the world, actually. She was the first woman to conduct major symphonies everywhere around the world. And she was a pioneer, and she was this ferocious Dutch-Italian woman. And I started studying with her when I was 10 years old. And between her and my father, you know, I was not going to be stopped because I was a woman. There was no question about that. And you know, this generation, my mother included, these were people who went to war during the Second World War, you know, and they ran the country, basically. Rosie the Riveter was their hero. And there was a liberated sense that we didn't, no, it didn't, it stalled out in the 50s, but it was prevalent in the 40s. I mean, Brico had her own symphony at Carnegie Hall during the war, and she conducted all over the world. And I read, she would get me to come to a lesson, then I would sit and file her press clippings from all over the world. So I knew about that. Maybe that had a powerful influence on me, but I was, I guess, trained in a way, educated to be my own person. We all were. My siblings and I both were. There are 5 of us, and we were all given, in a sense, permission to be who we are. And so I think that's part of it. I also feel, I don't know that I felt that kind of difference. There wasn't a kind of difference for me. I did pretty much what I wanted, and I had support. I was involved with a record label for, the first contract was signed on a handshake in 1961, and that lasted 25 years. The guy that signed me to that contract is still my friend, Jack Holzman. He's still working. He's, you know, in his 80s, he's working, doing all kinds of incredibly interesting work with Warner Brothers, Warner Atlantic Electro, which is WIA, which is the record group that I still get checks from, by God. One is due any day now.
I was thinking about that documentary of Antonia Brico today, actually, and I thought, where is the documentary on Judy Collins?
Oh.
Life magazine described you on the cover of its May 2nd, 1969 issue as a gentle voice amid the strife. How accurate was that headline then, and how should it change almost 50 years on?
Well, I had a loud voice amid the strife. I think that they saw that I was different, that somebody asked me this last night in a way that made me say that I think I'm a bit of a prude, and I do. I think there's something about me that's a little withheld. You know, my mother was, well, she had to be. I mean, she was married to my father, who was an alcoholic and crazy and brilliant and wonderful and, you know, a skirt chaser and all kinds. I mean, she had a lot to deal with. But I think all of her family, I think her sisters, her oldest sister, her youngest sister, who's still alive and is 96 or 7, I think, is also like the Bird Girls, a little restrained. And I think that I am a little restrained. I mean, let's say I don't jump in. I was a little nervous at a lot of protests. I went, and I marched, and I sang, and but you know, I was a little skeptical about certain aspects. I didn't want to be the one who threw the bomb, let's put it that way, in the village. You know, I probably wouldn't have been, I didn't go to certain things that I knew would be a little bit too off the wall for me. You know, I went to in the village, they had this these performances that were crazy. There was a lot of drugs. You know, I was thinking this morning, I was at my acupuncturist earlier today, and I was thinking, while I sat there with all the needles in me, I was thinking, I think people should take acid maybe once or twice, but not 25 times. Because maybe I was lucky. You know, I was such an addict that I took acid on Avenue A in the East Village in 1963 with John and Michelle Phillips, and of the Mamas and the Papas, and it was so bad. It was the worst trip. It took me 2 bottles of Jim Beam to come down in the first place. It was so horrible that I did it again. And I think that was it. I think another time I wouldn't be here. I did not do well, but I thought, well, maybe that was important. I mean, maybe that opening up that aspect where, you know, the world went crazy and birds were lecturing us on healthcare. I don't know. You know, the heavens spoke and the trees were marching around the lawn and so on. I mean, it was all very exciting, but I think once or twice was plenty. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean by a little bit off to the side. And actually, it probably protected me from a lot of things, because a lot of the times I was so drunk, I don't know if you and I were together then. I have no idea. And if you come up and ask me about it, I won't tell you, because I really don't remember. You know, if you remember the 60s, you weren't there. It's that simple.
I've got one more question, and
Oh,
I'm
no.
going to toss this out
Just
to
one?
the audience.
Oh.
And I hope you forgive me, but I cannot let this opportunity pass by. Would you be willing to sing just a line or two from Send in the Clowns?
Oh, for heaven's sake, yes. Isn't it rich? You'll have to sing with me. Are we a pair? Me here at last on the ground, you in midair. Where are the clowns?
Thank you so much, Judy Collins.
You are so welcome. Laura is spectacular interviewer.
I just want to know how, I'm going back to your book, how do you handle, you're in control, you bring your own food. Can you speak to everybody here who has food issues? How do you handle going out to dinner, going to your friends, people saying, just have one cookie. Here, I bought you a sandwich. Come over here. Because these are the things that the women and men with eating issues don't know what to do.
Yes.
And clearly just have one drink. It's not about drinking. People understand that now. They don't understand how one cookie can send you over the edge. Can you speak to that for a second?
Absolutely. It's been an issue for me for so long that I always had areas where it was clear that I wouldn't do that. I won't eat out of a canapé that's passed. I wouldn't touch one, for a lot of reasons. First of all, everybody's been breathing on it all night. But also that's a line that I drew a long time ago. And as far as when people say to you, won't you have, I was at dinner last night on my pub date. And my publisher's husband said, "Won't you?" He didn't really mean it, but he said, "Well," and he kind of made things, said things, and I don't care. Frankly, it's none of his business. It's only my business. It's empowerment. I mean, in one area, it's absolute empowerment. You do things. I take my scale to a restaurant. For the most part, I take it out. If somebody looks at it oddly, I think, oh, they need to know about this. They think this is peculiar? Uh-huh. So what does that mean about them, really? Also, it's very good because it's a way to signal to the world that this is doable. that this is something that many of us should be concerned about. We have diabetes is rampant in this country, you know, overweight, obesity, the healthcare. I mean, I don't want to read you those statistics because they're so terrifying. But saying no, I mean, no is a complete sentence. No thank you is even a better one. But think of it think of it, if nothing else, as a feminist empowerment issue. I mean, that may give you the impetus to say no thanks. It's like you would say no thanks to bullying, you know, no thanks. And don't you dare come near me again. You know, that kind of thing.
Hi. Ironically, I was in San Miguel de Allende two weeks ago and saw you there.
You were there? Oh,
yes,
for
I
God's
was.
sake.
And you told a couple of fabulous remembrances of Leonard Cohen.
Oh.
And I'm wondering if you might share some of that with this audience here.
Of
They were
course.
extremely interesting.
We were in San Miguel de Allende for a book fair, I guess it was, was it last weekend? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. I've never been there. It's quite a fabulous place. And Billy Collins was there and Mary Carr was there, and I was speaking about my new book, although they didn't have it yet because it wasn't out. But I spoke about it anyway. And the subject of Leonard Cohen came up, and of course his death has reminded everyone of how incredibly great he is. And it marked for me the end of a 50-year, not really the end because I can still sing his songs and think about him and dwell on that incredible good fortune, which happened when his friend, who he went to McGill with in Canada, was my friend in New York, and she always was talking about him in 61, 62, 63. And she'd say, you know, he was so wonderful and such a wonderful poet, very obscure poet. And then she called me one day in 1966, and she said, he wants to come and see you and play you his songs. And I said, are they obscure? And she said, oh, yes. And Leonard came to my door, and after a certain amount of, a day went by, and he and I visited with friends and had dinner, but he didn't play me any songs. And he came back the next day, and he said, I can't play the piano, I can't play the guitar, and I can't sing, and I don't know if this is a song. And then he sang me, Suzanne takes you down to her place by the river. You can hear the boats go by. You can spend the night beside her, and you know that she's half crazy. I don't think I sang it the other day, did I? A little bit. Anyway, I said, well, this is a song, and I'm recording it tomorrow. And of course, then he would not sing in public. He said, I'll never sing in public. And he knew, by the way, when he came to see me, he knew there was no mistaking the fact that he knew that of all the people he knew in the village, I was the only one who was not writing songs. So nobody else was going to be interested in his songs, and he knew that. And so he brought them to me, and I was lucky. I mean, I benefited from that, but there was method in his madness. And I said to him, you have to sing in public. You are not correct that you cannot sing. You are very smart, and you are a monk. But about this, you are entirely wrong. And so I pushed him on stage at the Fillmore in 1960, the end of 66, and made him sing. And he got halfway through Suzanne and walked off the stage, and everybody went crazy, and they love to hear you fall apart, you know. And then I went back with him, and we finished the song, and that was the beginning of his performance life. But he was a very important friend, and we had a friendship, and both musical and personal. And when our mutual friend Nancy emailed me the morning after his death and said he's gone, and I thought, how brilliant is he to die the morning of the election? And leave us with an album whose title was You Want It Darker. See, he's still providing material for me.
What led to the tour that's coming up in August with Stephen Stills.
Insanity? This question has to do with a tour that's coming up starting the end of July with Stephen Stills and me. And how did it come about? Well, we've remained friends, strangely enough, all these years. And we've been actually talking about this for about 10 years. And slowly but surely, we've kind of gotten our heads around it and decided that we can do it. It's going to be fun. I think it's sold out. I mean, somebody said to me they wanted to come to the show. Were you telling me that, Laura?
It's at the Keswick in August. It is sold out.
Oh my God. And they expect us to arrive. Me too. Me too. It'll be fun.
Thank you. I've read that you've always tried to maintain a weight under 120. I'm wondering, was there any point where you became when you became obese?
No, not technically. Well, maybe I didn't ever do that. What do you call that? Body mass? I don't know what that's called. Yeah, I never did that. My weight, I was always figuring out how to keep it off. So this was a preoccupation that was like a mental illness in a way, because that was my goal all the time, was to get that weight off. And so I would get to 130 and I would say, okay, I have to go on Atkins, or I have to go on the macrobiotic, and I have to go take those pills some more. I'll go see this and that and the other doctor. I'll go buy this next book that's got... the last thing I went on was Kevin Trudeau. It was insane, because I'd already been in one of these programs for a number of years, but I was desperate. I couldn't get... And I was back at Weight Watchers. What was the question? My top weight was 140. I hit that at the age of 19, and then it was always varying between 115 and I was back up to almost 140 when I went on this plan that I'm on now 8.5 years ago, and I could not get it back down. I mean, this whole thing has nothing to do with willpower. By the way, people talk about willpower. It's not willpower. It's grace is what it is. Because I found something that worked and said, okay, I get it, it works. No grains, no flour, no sugar. You think that's an effort? Not at all, because once I'm off of that for a few days, I don't want it. I don't have the chatter's gone. The cravings, that's why I called the book Cravings. By the way, the title of the book came from my nephew 2.5 years ago, Aiden. My nephew, my sister's youngest, her middle son, who is brilliant, and he said, you should call it Cravings for sure. And that's what happens, you drop, and this happens with most of the diets you'd go on, because you go on for 10 days, 2 weeks, things are getting better, my mind is clearing up, I'm not reaching for the sugar, and I'm not opening the refrigerator every 4 minutes, and I'm off the scale every day. I used to get, on the scale when I changed my earrings. You think that's not true? That's true. But the insanity of the eating disorder thing is, first you have dysmorphia. You always think you're heavier than you are. And nobody can tell you. And by the way, most doctors, as I said, know nothing. Most nutritionists know nothing. They'll want you to go on a normal. Well, what's normal? I don't know what's normal. But as an alcoholic, I can make that connection that Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book makes when the doctor's opinion says it is certain foods to which we are allergic, and they create an allergy and a compulsion. Period. End of story. And all those foods that go into alcohol are the ones I don't eat, because I, at 98.6 degrees, turn those foods into alcohol, which creates... I want more. And the danger is that so many of these foods are in our foods that we don't know it. Corn is everywhere. And we support the corn industry, and they're poisoning us. And it tells us we have to have more and more and more and more. Everywhere we turn is sugar. And every food we eat almost, if it's processed, has corn in it, corn syrup. Read your labels. My husband, I want to introduce my husband, Louis Nelson. He's sitting here in the front row. And Lewis, I'm reminded, of course, that he's here because I can see him and I'm married to him. He designed the Korean Memorial Wall on the Mall in Washington, D.C., among other things. He also designed the nutritional lists that are on the back of every product that you get. When was it? It was after we had met. It was in the 70s? What was the year? Do you remember? 76. And by the time we were together, it was out. 1988, it actually was passed. And now, of course, it's on everything. So you have to look carefully. And if you can read the tiny print, get your little glasses out and look at it carefully. But, you know, the point is that, so I don't eat those foods. And they don't set up the craving. And most nutritionists will insist that you have to have grains. Well, it's not true. Grains came into our food chain very late in the game. And I talk about the Paleo Diet a little bit because we come from people who ran in the woods and the forests and the jungles, bringing down, you know, boars and antelope and bears and eating them and eating berries and things. And grains, when they did come along, caused a lot of problems, and they still do. They cause illness, they cause a lot of allergies and problems. And the guy who wrote Wheat Belly's got it right. If you've read that book, he's pretty much on the same page as I am with what works and what doesn't work. And also he understands that fat is necessary. And so the 4 tablespoons of fat that I get every day are necessary to the balance. By the way, I dropped down when I dropped down, it was at 139 when I started this back into gray sheet, because I originally got abstinent from bulimia on gray sheet in 1982. So I've been absent from the bulimia part for 34, 35 years. But, yes, so when I started this, it comes off very easily for the most part. You know, you have a balanced life. You do some exercise, you have a food plan that's pretty good, and you're working out a little while, and you're reading and walking and doing all these things. So it comes off pretty fast. But it stopped at around 116, and it hasn't gone down any further. So I don't know. The body knows where you're supposed to be if you're eating in a moderate and healthy way. It'll kind of go where it's supposed to go and doesn't get too far out of line. Anyway.
You describe in the book how you've always been busy, and here you are, you're touring 130 nights a year, you have a book tour, you have new albums all the time, you're just at the Grammys.
Oh yes, we got a Grammy. I got a Grammy for the first time in 40 years.
I have to ask, what is Judy Collins, the grandmother, like, or the great-grandmother?
Well, she's just like she is, you know. I mean, I just am so thrilled with my granddaughter. I think she's just so amazing. She just terrifies me sometimes. She's so solid and so smart and so generous, and I just adore her. And that little boy is just something else, you know. Smart, musical. We were together over. I see them a lot, so I'll see them next week, and I see them out in California, and they come to New York sometimes. But at Thanksgiving, Colin came over to the house, and that's my little 3. He was almost 3 then. And so we went into my studio, and my competition now, I mean, he was raised on all my music, so he has to have it when he goes to sleep and then when he naps and so on. But my competition is now Justin Bieber. And so he came into the studio, and I've got the microphone set up and the piano, and so I gave him the microphone, and he's making these noises and playing the piano and so on. And I said, here's my new song, and I sang, the moon is chasing me across the snowdrift, just that line. And he sang it back to me exactly that way. And at Thanksgiving dinner, we're sitting around the dinner, and everybody's eating and drinking, and so he's going to go, and he's going to be excused from his high chair, and he suddenly his little voice pipes up, and he sings, The moon is chasing me across the snowdrift. I mean, he's very talented. So Justin Bieber, look out.
Is there a certain lyric that always gets to you, and if so, why?
Well, it's probably from Guys and Dolls, and I don't even sing it professionally, and I've never recorded it, and nobody really sings it. My time of day is a dark time, a couple of hours before dawn, when the street belongs to the cop and the janitor with the mop, and the grocery clerks are all gone, and the smell of the rain-washed pavement comes up clean and sweet and clear, and the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, that's my time of day, and you're the only one I ever wanted to share it with me. Thank you.